I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to get cheated on. I wasn't perfect, but I worked hard, loved my wife, and did everything I could to provide for our life together. Maybe that was my mistake, thinking that love and effort were enough. Megan and I had been married for 9 years. We built a life together from the ground up, starting with nothing but a shared apartment, and dreams bigger than our bank accounts. Over time, we made it. I started my own contracting business, and she worked her way up in corporate HR. We bought a house in a nice neighborhood, took vacations to places we once only saw in travel magazines, and even talked about having kids soon. Looking back, I should have seen the cracks forming long before I did. It started small. She became distant, constantly checking her phone, smiling at messages she never shared. Work trips became more frequent, always at the last minute, and she seemed more invested in dressing up for the office than she ever did for me. I ignored the signs, convinced myself that I was just overthinking. Until the night everything changed. That night Megan was out late, again. I stayed up waiting, pretending to watch TV, but my eyes were locked on the clock. When she finally walked in past midnight, her hair was a mess, her lipstick smeared. I asked her where she'd been. She hesitated. And in that moment of silence I knew. She muttered something about a late work meeting, but her eyes wouldn't meet mine. I let the words hang in the air, waiting to see if she'd dig herself in deeper. She did. You know how these corporate things go, she added, slipping off her heels like I was supposed to believe she had just spent 6 hours in a conference room. I nodded slowly, forcing my face to stay neutral. Inside, my stomach twisted. I wasn't an idiot. I could smell the faint trace of cologne on her blouse, one that sure as hell wasn't mine. I wanted to explode. I wanted to scream at her, demand the truth, force her to say the words I already knew. But instead I took a deep breath and said, I see. That was it. No accusations, no yelling. Just 2 words. And in that moment I saw something flicker in her expression, fear. Megan had always been a good liar, but she wasn't prepared for this. She expected a fight, a confrontation. Instead I gave her calm indifference, and it threw her off. She forced a laugh. Why are you looking at me like that? I shrugged. No reason. You should get some rest. She stared at me for a long moment before heading to the bedroom. I stayed on the couch, staring at the door she closed behind her. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to accuse her. Not yet. I was going to find proof. Real proof. And when I did, she wouldn't see me coming. The next morning, Megan acted like nothing had happened. She kissed my cheek, poured herself coffee, and scrolled through her phone like she wasn't sneaking around behind my back. I played along. I asked about her day, nodded at her half-hearted answers, and even smiled when she said she'd be working late again. Inside, though, my mind was already in motion. The first thing I did was check our phone records. Megan and I shared a family plan, and while she wasn't careless enough to leave messages or call logs in her phone, the bill told a different story. One number appeared over and over again, late at night during her work trips, even on weekends when she was supposedly out with friends. I copied the number and did a reverse search online. It didn't take long to find a name, Ryan Carter. I didn't recognize it, but that didn't mean much. Maybe he was a coworker, or maybe he was just some guy she met on one of those business trips. Either way, I needed more than a name. So I waited. That night, when Megan said she was heading to the office for a late meeting, I told her to have a good night and kissed her on the cheek like always. Then, the second she walked out the door, I grabbed my keys and followed her. I wasn't proud of it. But I needed to see the truth for myself. And as I watched her pull into a quiet hotel parking lot instead of her office, I realized I had been right all along. I parked a few spaces away, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My heart pounded, but my mind was clear. I had my answer. Now I just needed proof. Megan sat in her car for a moment, probably checking her reflection, fixing her lipstick, making sure she looked perfect for him. Then, like clockwork, a man walked out of the hotel lobby. Tall, confident, dressed too casually for a work meeting. Ryan Carter. She stepped out of the car, and they met in the middle of the lot. He smiled at her. She laughed, that laugh, the one I hadn't heard in months. Then, right there, without hesitation, she kissed him. Not a quick peck. A slow, familiar kiss. I exhaled through my nose, forcing my pulse to steady. I took out my phone and started recording. If she was going to betray me, I was going to make damn sure she couldn't deny it. They disappeared into the hotel, hand in hand, and I sat there staring at the entrance long after they were gone. I thought about storming in, catching them in the act, making a scene. But that wasn't me. That wasn't how I wanted to play this. Instead, I drove home. I spent the rest of the night collecting my thoughts, making a plan. Because if Megan thought she was going to play me for a fool, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. The next morning, Megan came home like nothing had happened. She walked into the kitchen, stretched like she'd had a long night at work, and greeted me with a casual "Morning." I looked up from my coffee, forcing a small smile. "Morning. Late night?" She yawned. "Yeah, those meetings are killing me." "Liar." I nodded, taking a sip of coffee, watching her closely. She didn't look guilty. If anything, she looked comfortable, like she truly believed she had me fooled. That made it easier. Over the next few days, I gathered everything I needed. Bank statements, credit card transactions, even GPS history from the family plan on our phones. Megan had been using our money to pay for hotel rooms, dinners, and God knows what else. I also learned more about Ryan Carter. Turns out, he wasn't just some random fling, he was a coworker. Married, with 2 kids. That complicated things, but it also gave me leverage. I wasn't just going to confront Megan. I was going to make sure she couldn't walk away from this without consequences. So, I did something she never expected. I reached out to Ryan's wife. Her name was Emily Carter, and when I found her on social media, it didn't take much effort to get her number. One message was all it took. "Hi Emily, my name is Jake. I think we need to talk about your husband and my wife." Emily called me within minutes. Her voice shook as she asked, "What are you talking about?" I took a deep breath. "I have proof that your husband, Ryan, is having an affair with my wife, Megan." Silence. Then, a shaky exhale. "You're sure? I wouldn't be calling you if I wasn't." I told her everything, how I had followed Megan, seen them together, and gathered evidence. I even offered to send her the pictures and videos. She didn't hesitate. "Send me everything." A minute later, her phone dinged with the messages. Another long pause. Then I heard quiet sobs. "I knew something was off," she whispered. "He's been distant, secretive. I didn't want to believe it." I understood. I had been there too. After a few moments, she sniffled. "What are you planning to do?" I hesitated before answering. "I'm not rushing into anything. I want to make sure Megan doesn't get to walk away from this on her terms." Emily was silent for a moment, then said, "I want in." That caught me off guard. "What?" "If we're both being betrayed, we should work together," she said, her voice stronger now. "Ryan thinks he's in control. So does your wife. Let's show them they're wrong." I hadn't expected an ally in this. But as I sat there, listening to the anger building in Emily's voice, I realized something. Megan and Ryan weren't the only ones who could play dirty. Emily and I spent the next few days strategizing. We weren't going to act out of anger. We were going to be smart. If Megan and Ryan thought they were getting away with this, they were about to get the shock of their lives. First, Emily confronted Ryan. Not with screaming or accusations, but with cold, hard proof. She waited until he was home, then calmly placed my photos and the phone records in front of him. His face drained of color. He tried to deny it at first, but Emily didn't give him the chance. "I already talked to Jake," she told him. "We know everything." Ryan panicked. He begged, pleaded, promised it wasn't what it looked like. But Emily had already made her decision. She wanted a divorce. And she made sure he knew one thing: if he tried to fight it, she'd take everything. Meanwhile, I played the long game with Megan. I acted normal, gave her no reason to suspect anything. She thought she still had me fooled. That was the only reason she didn't see it coming. I went to a lawyer and laid everything out: her affair, her misuse of our joint funds, and the evidence I had collected. My lawyer smiled. "She's going to have a hard time getting anything from you." That was exactly what I wanted. Then, when I was ready, I set my trap. One night, I told Megan I had a surprise for her: a weekend getaway. She lit up, completely unaware that this trip would be her downfall. Megan was thrilled about the getaway. She had no clue what was really happening. She probably thought I was trying to fix our marriage, that I was still clueless. I booked a nice hotel, ironically, the same chain she had been sneaking around in with Ryan. The irony wasn't lost on me. As we packed, she acted sweeter than she had in months, even wrapping her arms around me, telling me how much she appreciated me. It took everything in me not to laugh. When we arrived, I kept things light. We had dinner, a few drinks, and she was completely at ease. That's when I pulled out my phone. "I need to show you something," I said. She frowned, probably expecting a vacation itinerary or some stupid romantic gesture. Instead, I pressed play on the video, the one of her kissing Ryan in the hotel parking lot. Her face went white. What is this?" I didn't say a word. I just let her watch. The clip ended, and then I showed her the screenshots, bank statements, call logs, messages I had recovered. She stammered. "It's not what it looks like." I laughed, shaking my head. "Megan, don't insult me. I know everything." She started crying, trying to reach for my hand, but I pulled away. "We're done," I said. "I've already spoken to a lawyer. You're not getting a dime from me." Her tears turned to anger. "You can't do this to me." I leaned back, calm as ever. "I already did." Then I handed her an envelope. Divorce papers. Megan stared at the divorce papers like they were some kind of joke. She blinked, then laughed. Actually laughed. "You think this is over?" she scoffed, wiping her fake tears away. "You can't just blindside me with this and expect me to walk away." I smirked. "I'm not expecting you to walk away. I'm expecting you to lose." Her face twisted in anger. "I'll fight this, Jake. I'll get my share. You think some little detective work changes anything? We built this life together. Half of it is mine." I was waiting for that. "Actually, no. It's not." I pulled out another folder, financial records. Documents showing that our house was bought under my name only. Bank statements proving that the majority of our assets came from my earnings, while her money had been spent on her personal expenses. And of course, Ryan. Her confidence wavered, but she wasn't done. "That doesn't matter. The court will still give me something." I shrugged. "Maybe. But that's where Emily comes in." Megan's face froze. "What?" I leaned in. "You see, Ryan's wife is divorcing him too. And she's got enough dirt to bury him. Once she files for infidelity and financial misconduct, Ryan's going to be ruined. And since you were using our joint money for your little affair, my lawyer's going after you for marital waste." Her lips parted slightly, realization dawning. She was trapped. For the first time, Megan had nothing to say. She knew she had lost. Megan sat there, her face pale, her hands gripping the divorce papers so tightly they crumpled. She opened her mouth, then shut it, like she was trying to calculate her next move. But there was no move. I had won. She scoffed, shaking her head. "So that's it? You think you can just throw me away?" I chuckled. "You threw us away the second you climbed into a hotel bed with Ryan." Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't feel a shred of sympathy. She had lied to my face, used our life together to fund her affair, and thought she'd walk away untouched. Now she was finally realizing how wrong she was. "I loved you," she whispered. I stared at her, expressionless. No, Megan. You loved what I gave you. And now that's gone. I stood up, grabbed my bag, and walked to the door. The papers need to be signed by Friday. If you try to fight this, you'll lose more than just the divorce. She swallowed hard. And if I sign? I shrugged. Then you walk away with whatever dignity you have left. I didn't wait for a response. I walked out of that hotel room, out of that chapter of my life, and never looked back. A month later, the divorce was finalized. Megan didn't fight it, she knew better. Ryan lost his wife, his kids, and half of everything he owned. As for me? I walked away with everything I had worked for, free from the lies, the betrayal, and the woman who thought she could play me. And damn, that felt good.